we're so happy to have you here. You should. Oh, I know.
Neither of those were right. Those were 2 pagers, the other ones. So this one.
The Jewish synagogue viral
So this one's wrong.
of like, hey, look who came to our Easter service.
And then we go this one. Do we have any water? No.
To look like Paul McCartney. I feel like that's a common thing. It's a common thing. Shabbat.
Okay.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I see we're still making our way to our seats. Lots of good Shabbat hugs and kisses and greetings to go all around. We're so glad to have you with us this Shabbat, whether you're here in person with us or joining us over live stream. We are
Let there be
Let
light.
there be light. We haven't even said the blessing yet. But we are so glad to be gathered together for this Shabbat tonight. For our service, we will be holding both the dark and the light tonight, both the bitter and the sweet. On this Shabbat, we are going to be marking Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, which begins on Sunday night. Every year it feels powerful and important, but I think this year it feels a little bit more poignant as we look around in the world and we might feel a little more concerned, a little more bothered than we might be on other years. But we're also here to celebrate Shabbat and all of the joy and sweetness that comes with that as well. We have Presley here who's going to celebrate her bat mitzvah tomorrow afternoon. Very exciting. And we want to lift up these moments of happiness as well. This is what we do as Jews. We hold both the light and the dark together. We mark and acknowledge the darkness without losing sight of the joy that's all around us. We will acknowledge the mourning of the Holocaust and the horrors of the past, but also dig into the resilience and strength from the stories that we hear of the power and fortitude of the Jewish people for thousands and thousands of years. So we will have a little mix of the sweet and the sour tonight.
We're going to begin with the words of Eli, Eli, words written by Hannah Senish, who, amidst the horrible future that she faced, was able to still write these beautiful words of hope and an appreciation of the beauty that was still all around her. If you'd like to follow along, you'll find it in the Siddur on page 349. At this point, we're going to invite Presley and her family up to help us bring in that light of Shabbat.
We all know the power of Shabbat candles in our own homes, but sometimes Shabbat candles are more magical and more mystical and more effective than we can ever imagine, as you will hear in this true story. The train dragged on with its human freight. Pressed together like cattle in crowded trucks, the unfortunate occupants were unable even to move. The atmosphere was stifling. As the Friday afternoon wore on, the Jewish men, women, and children in the Nazi transport sank deeper and deeper into their misery. Suddenly, an old Jewish woman managed with great effort to move and open her bundle. Laboriously, she drew out 2 candlesticks and a challah. She had just prepared for Shabbat when she was dragged from her home that morning. They were the only things she had thought worth taking. Soon the Shabbat candles lit up the faces of the Jews in the car, and the singing of Lecha Dodi transformed the scene. Shabbat, with its atmosphere of peace, had descended upon them all. We turn to page 2 for the blessings over the Shabbat candles.
We're going to bring in that light 3 times. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you to Presley and her family. We'll be calling up Presley a little bit later on in our service to help lead some of our prayers.
We say many times during our service that we will begin to do something, and then we do like 3 things to start to do this. So we say we begin Shabbat, right? We begin by saying Shabbat Shalom. We begin by lighting candles. We begin and we begin and begin. So when does Shabbat actually start? So technically, it will be when the candles are lit. But sometimes that doesn't feel like it is extravagant enough. It's not bold enough to really welcome in Shabbat. So when we sing Lecha Dodi, this is really the moment where we imagine that we are welcoming in Shabbat because she is a bride coming into the room. And anyone who has been to a wedding knows that when the bride walks into the room, you know. You don't need a cue, you don't need direction. You know that she is here and the moment has arrived. So just as we sing Lecha Dodi on page 20 in just a moment, and we welcome in Shabbat as this bride, we know she's here. We know that sacred time is here, just as much as we know a bride in a wedding gown has entered into the room. On page 20, we will sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat, the Kabbalat. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat, the Kabbalat. welcome in Shabbat with a full heart, with a full soul, with a full body. Remain standing for our official call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, page 28. We just finished the holiday of Passover, the holiday of our redemption and our freedom. And as we finished our festival holiday, this week felt anything but free. But we have a moment tonight in our services as we're all standing just as our biblical ancestors stood at Mount Sinai to join together in the words of Shema Yisrael, to say out loud that we are proud, we are Jewish, and we are one. So I ask that you please join me now in words that our people have chanted through pogrom and plague and all of the troubles before, the words of Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. We're going to invite Presley up to help lead us in the Ve'ahavta. We are found on page 36.
The Hafta has a lot of commandments in it, but the one that always stands out for me is teach your children diligently. Teach your children. Here's a quote from a survivor, Ralph Hochman, about after his experiences during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. While working in the gas chambers, I was told by many people who were gassed, don't forget to tell what happened. Please, tell the world. My message is, please tell your children to tell their children and their children's children. Make my promise to these millions come true. Ve'ahavta expresses that.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובאישריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Thank you. Can go take a seat. On page 40, we find our Michamocha, our song of freedom, words that the Israelites sang and cried out as they crossed the sea into their promise of freedom, but yes, the journey had just begun. And we can't help but in these moments when we've been chanting the Michamocha these last months, to really have the painful realization that there's so many of Am Yisrael who are still held in captivity in Gaza. And this particular setting of Michamocha, I think, has that feeling of strength, which we all need to maintain during this challenging time, to give hope to our people that they will come home and that they will be free once again. So we have the Michamocha on page 40.
Michamocha
Even as we pray for freedom for those that we need so much, that we know how much they need that, we know that we can't grant that necessarily. We can't go in and tear down mountains and make things happen in the world that are just out of our control. But our next prayer reminds us that there are some things that we can control. As we pray Hashkivenu, our prayer for protection, for love and support, we ask God to enfold us in love and comfort. This is something that we can do in the world. We may not be able to break down walls and jump mountains, but we can love each other. We can wrap each other in that embrace of comfort and support. Even when the world is scary and we wish we could do so much more, we can make sure that each person beside us knows they are loved and knows they are cared for. Hashkivenu is on page 42.
At this point, I'd like to invite Sadie Tanner Rose up to the bima. Sadie is a graduating senior off to NYU Tisch. And Sadie, I dedicate this prayer to you tonight as you go off into the world and also to college, which right now is a challenging place. And we just want to spread a Sukkat Shalom, a sukkah of peace over you.
We'll continue now with the Amidah. We will, tonight, we'll begin on page 46. The Amidah, as always, is the prayers that are most central to us, the most important to us. Tonight we will begin the prayers together, but then continue silently. You're welcome to use the prayers on the page or whatever you need to pray in your heart tonight. Please rise.
We're going to call back up to the bima Presley to lead us in the opening of the Amidah.
שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל, אלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניכם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד אתה, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברעמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומחייהם אמונתו לשני אחר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחייך.
We take a moment for our silent meditations, either using the words in the prayer book before you or the prayers of your heart.
As we offer the prayers that are most powerful and important to us, this is also the time when we ask for the prayer of healing for the people that we love most in the world. This, of course, is incredibly important to us. So whether we are thinking of someone who needs healing physically, mentally, or emotionally, please share their name with the community, or please stand and share their name as my eyes move across the room. refuah shlema, a full and complete recovery for all of those we pray for. We'll now turn to page 259 to read the prayer for the state of Israel before we continue with Hatikva. Page 259, please rise. We read together. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Amen. We ask you to turn your attention to the flag of Israel as we join together in Hatikva. If you'd like to follow along, it's on page 374.
Please be seated.
I realize now that growing up, many of us lived in a golden, special time that we thought would last forever. It was after the Holocaust. Israel had been established. Jews were doing well in America. We felt safe. We felt part of the country. We felt American. I remember meeting fighters, Holocaust survivors who were fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto. And I remember their stories telling me, and I thought, how did they do it? How did they fight? How were they so brave? Thank God we'll never have to do that again. We felt that was the past. But yet, since October 7th, and really before October 7th, we think about the march in Charlottesville was probably the first, the shootings in Pittsburgh. We realized that that was an anomaly, and seems like the more norm is what's happening again to our college students, to Jews all over the world. And so the Holocaust, remembering the Holocaust, is more important this year than I think it's been for a long time. So I'd like to start this part of the service with a reading, to join me in a reading on page 292. And I would like to do it responsively, like I read the first paragraph, you read the second, I read the third, you read the fourth. We have lived in numberless towns and villages, and in too many of them we have endured cruel suffering. Some we have forgotten, others are sealed in our memory, a wound that does not heal. 100 generations of victims and martyrs, still their blood cries out from the earth, and so many at Dachau, at Buchenwald, at Babi Yar. Your turn. What can we say?
What can we do? How bear the unbearable, or accept what life has brought to our people? All who are born must die, but how shall we compare the slow passage of time with the callous slaughter of the innocent, cut off before their time?
They lived with faith, not all, but many, and surely many died with faith in God, in life, in the goodness that even flames cannot destroy. May we find a way to the strength of that faith, that trust, that sure sense that life and soul endure beyond this body's death. They have left their lives to us. Let a million prayers rise whenever Jews worship. Let a million candles glow against the darkness of these unfinished lives.
We are here tonight in our community commemoration of Yom HaShoah to bear witness to the stories that we'll hear, but we're also here to remember. In the rising of the sun, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember.
Boss was a 14-year-old boy who was in the Terezin concentration camp. There were a group of boys there that are well known. We found out after they died. They wrote newspapers, they wrote poetry, they wrote reports of what was going on. And most of them did not survive. They were sent to Auschwitz, including Franta Bass. But he wrote this poem that I'm going to read to you that I think embodies our amazing Jewish college students. This is what they are doing. They are living this poem by Franta Bass. I am a Jew and will be a Jew forever. Even if I should die from hunger, never will I submit. I will always fight for my people. On my honor, I will never be ashamed of them. I give my word. I am proud of my people. How dignified they are. Even if I am suppressed, I will always come back to life. We're now going to light some memorial candles over here, the three of us, and we ask you to please rise.
died in their towns and villages, for those who died in the ghettos.
For those who died in the cattle cars, for those who died in the camps.
For those who died in the forests, for those who died on the death marches, and for those who have died throughout the history of our people as a result of Jew hatred, we remember them this evening.
We remain standing for the prayer for their souls, El Molei Rachamim. No, we do not. Please sit down. Please be seated. Before we do that, we are going to hear from two descendants of Holocaust survivors, somebody whose parents were Holocaust survivors, someone whose grandparents were survivors. Alan Tuckman did not just have a mother who survived the Holocaust, he also had a father. Both his parents were survivors. He grew up knowing some of their stories, but living in an atmosphere with other Holocaust survivors. It was a special kind of life with a special kind of consciousness, a special kind of responsibility. I invite Alan to share his story now.
My name is Alan Tuckman, and I am the child of Holocaust survivors. That makes me what is known as a second-generation survivor. What an odd thought that somehow I survived the Holocaust. I can tell you that this concept is not so far-fetched as it sounds. Most children of Holocaust survivors share several things in common. Most of us had no living grandparents. Many of us suffer from a variety of psychological injuries that are hard to overcome, and many of us were brought up in a strict environment born of fear. I cannot tell you the number of times that I was made to finish all the food on my plate because, as my father intoned, "You'll want that when another Hitler comes." But this was microscopic in comparison to what my parents went through. And while my sister and I only heard very brief stories from them, I recently uncovered some letters from doctors that were engaged by the German government after the war to detail what my parents went through for reparation purposes. I can assure you that the depravity of what was inflicted on them often beggars belief. I'll never forget my mom's reaction to the movie Schindler's List. She called it sugar-coated. But there is a story to tell here, and it's one with a relatively happy ending, I'm glad to say. My father, Leib Tuckman, who went by Louis when he came to America, was born in Warsaw, Poland, and, notwithstanding the regular anti-Semitism he endured there, had a relatively normal upbringing, one of 5 brothers of a family in the drayage business. As a young teen, when World War II broke out, he was first sent away from Warsaw to live with his grandparents in Radom and worked on their farm, which he loved. Eventually, of course, he was rounded up and sent back to Warsaw, which by this time had been ghettoized. The conditions became more and more desperate as the Germans herded more and more people into its confines. By the summer of 1942, there were nearly 500,000 Jews in an area that was just over 2 square miles in size, and people were packed 9 to a room on average. In the ghetto, my father contracted typhus and dysentery, yet survived. Then, as was the fate of many in the Warsaw ghetto, he was sent, along with an older brother and their father, by train to the Auschwitz concentration camp for processing. As luck would have it, on the day he arrived, he was suffering from pneumonia and was burning up with fever when the notorious selection process was taking place. The Germans didn't need any sick Jews to take care of, but my father was propped up on one side by his own father and on the other side by his brother and passed the selection process. He survived again. After being shuttled to some of the smaller work camps, he eventually was moved to Dachau, where he spent the rest of the war. Yet again, he defied death by sheer luck and perhaps some guile, as he was such a good worker that the capo who ran his work detail specifically requested that he be allowed to continue working. My father survived yet again. After the war, my dad and his brother were sent to a displaced persons camp in Austria, and from there, Dad was put on a ship for New York in 1947. His new life had just begun. My mother, Shoshana Littner, she went by Susan or Shandel here, had quite a different set of wartime experiences. Born into an Orthodox family in Rzeszów, Poland, she enjoyed an upper middle class existence due to her family's successful egg business. I've actually seen Google Earth satellite pictures of her home in a beautiful suburban neighborhood. A clever little girl, she excelled in school and experienced much love in a household of 4 children. World War II changed all that, as my mother, still not yet a teenager, experienced persecution that defies belief, culminating in the horrendous nightmare of my mother witnessing the slaughter of most of her family in the Lodz ghetto, her life spared by a compassionate guard who told her to lie down and act dead. She spent the war moving from place to place, forest to forest, and small village to small village. She eventually was taken in by a rural Polish husband and wife to work as their maid with a don't ask, don't tell understanding. It was a little hairy as their son, who was in the Polish Home Guard, would come home on leave periodically, and Mom would have to hightail it out of there. While she avoided the concentration camp fate of many others, her sufferings were no less severe. She developed frostbite on her feet and lost most of the toes on both of her feet, the only ones were staying intact being the big toes. The doctor who treated her told her she would never walk again, as the smaller toes she lost are used for balance. She basically told him to get lost, and until my mom was almost 90, she walked and walked and walked without losing her balance. Very tough lady. When the war ended for her, Mom ended up in a DP camp, also in Austria. As luck would have it, she actually met my dad one evening when several young people were socializing in the dorm, and she happened to sit on my dad's cot. They didn't get off on the right foot, though, when Dad chased her off the cot, as she was defiling the quarter-bounceable tight corners he had proudly achieved. She was livid and gave him a piece of her mind. Dad obviously liked her firecracker personality because he inquired about her availability from her friends, who kindly informed her that Shoshana was dating a young man named Mendel. Dad bided his time. My mom eventually made it onto a ship bound for Canada, and once there, through the B'nai B'rith, she experienced a true kindness when a Jewish family in Montreal, who already had 4 teenagers of their own, agreed to make her their 5th child. This normalization of her life experiences had begun anew, and to this day we consider their kids and grandkids true cousins. Oh yeah, Dad eventually caught up with this girl Shoshana and in Montreal, and they were married in 1950, just in time for my father to be drafted into the US Army and be sent to Korea to enjoy another war. But this time my father was not a victim, and he was very proud of his military service for his adopted country. And after he came home from Korea, he learned the TV repair trade and began his career as a TV repairman. We eventually moved from New Jersey to California to follow that same brother of my father's who helped him survive the war. And while my father passed in 1997, we just lost my mom 2 weeks ago at 93 years of age. My parents' Holocaust experiences are really not that unusual. There are about 245,000 survivors still living around the world, and each and every one of them has their own story to tell. But a serendipitous combination of luck, perseverance, and strength of will is something they all share. As a proud second-generation survivor, I can only admire those that came before me.
Thank you so much, Alan, for sharing your father's story. At this point, I'd like to invite up our second speaker, Amy Conroy, a member of this congregation, who's here with her beautiful family tonight. And her family, her parents, along with her husband Brad, have really dedicated themselves to telling the stories of the Shoah, to fighting anti-Semitism, and to supporting our troops in Israel to ensure that never again truly means never again. She is the granddaughter of 4 survivors and will be sharing the story of her grandfather.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Amy Conroy, and I'm the granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors. Tonight is my privilege to share with you the story of my grandfather, whom I called Papa. He is my dad's father. My dad is here with us tonight, Lenny. His name was Nathan Rosenblatt, and he survived Auschwitz death camp. It's been never again, but unfortunately, today with what's going on, never again is now. Telling my Papa's story has never been more relevant and important to share. Today in 2024, we live life of comfort and privilege. Well, my Papa lived a very similar life of comfort and privilege. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Take yourself back to 1935, to the beautiful city of Lodz, Poland. You're walking around on cobblestone streets, passing by gorgeous stone buildings filled with bakeries, selling pierogi, sweet pastries, and of course, sauerkraut. While you're strolling around the beautiful streets, you see men in white doctor's coats walking to and from their offices, tailors, teachers, architects, all the joys of a vibrant social life. The city had beautiful theaters, dance halls, and many community gatherings. Jewish culture was the main contributor to the landscape of this beautiful city in Poland. On a typical day, my Papa would watch his dad make his journey to and from the furrier shop, selling exquisite custom fur coats to the affluent of Europe. Meanwhile, him and his younger sister, Tamara, would attend school. During the weekends, he would spend hours playing soccer in the neighborhood streets. But one day, this beautiful childhood turned very, very dark and ugly. He heard banging on his door of his apartment. The Nazi guards demanded he get out of his home. He was thrown out of his apartment and into the ghetto just outside of his apartment. My Papa, along with all the Jews, were now put into this ghetto, barbed wired. All of them had to wear a yellow Jewish star on their jacket, otherwise they'd be hung to death or beaten. He would receive 1 bowl of watery soup with bugs and dirt, maybe 1 bowl a day. He was starving. He was completely cut off from news from the outside world. He had no idea what was going on, what this chaos was. He was assigned a job. Everyone was assigned a job that the Nazis gave them. But he had a schedule, and he had to be back at a certain time. And one day, when he was minutes late, the Nazi guards saw him and yanked him and beat him and threw him into the jail in the ghetto. One morning, he was in the ghetto and he heard rumors that the ghetto was being liquidated. Where are we going? Where? He was given orders by the Gestapo. That was the police. On a specific date and a specific time, he was herded like animals with his dad and his sister to the railroad station. Hope surged with my Papa. He thought, are we gonna be free? Are we going somewhere better? Where was the next destination? The officer kept on saying, it's gonna be better, you're going somewhere better. He didn't know what to think. He just knew he had to follow the screaming and the shouting and the barking dogs and follow the officer's orders to the railroad track. He was thrown with his dad and his sister onto a wood-packed train car intended to use for horses. They were like cattle being taken to a place that he had no idea. He was starving and scared. Where are we going? Am I gonna believe the rumors? The rumors are that we're gonna get sent to Sweden to get blown up, but the officers are telling me I'm going somewhere better. Am I hoping for better days? He had no idea. He was just a teenager. He knew he was packed in a car, in a cattle car, what the animals were supposed to be in. and he knew that he was going for hours and hours and hours. And then came the arrival to Auschwitz. When he arrived, he could barely hear. There was banging and shouting and sounds and smokestacks. And a Nazi guard opened the sliding door, and people started falling out. People were going to the bathroom, people were fainting, people were dying. And he looked up and he saw smoke, and he smelled burning bodies. And they said, "Run, fast, fast. You go with your dad, the sister goes here." And it was so chaos, but yet it was orderly because everything was orderly, and the Germans knew what they were doing, so he went to the left. And they said to him and his dad, "We're taking you to the showers to be clean." So they took him into the shower area, told him to get naked. All these men are getting naked, and the Nazis are staring at their bodies. They look at his dad's body, he was around 40 years old, and they look at my grandfather's body. The 40-year-old body wasn't in such good working condition for the Nazis, so they said, "You go to the left." They took my grandfather, who was a teenager, "You go to the right." That was the last time my grandfather saw his dad. He was sent to the crematorium and was burned to ashes. The conditions were so bad in Auschwitz camp. It was slave labor. They woke you up in the middle of the night. They took roll call for no reason. If you had a big foot, they gave you small shoes. If you had a small foot, they gave you big shoes. If it was hot, they gave you wool clothes to wear to keep your body suffocating. If it was freezing in the winter, they gave you barely any clothes. They slept in these wood bunks, 3-layer bunk beds with multiple people, at minimum 4 people per bunk. It was infested with rats. He was beaten and kicked. It was the most horrific thing you could think of in this time. And all he was thinking was, why me? Why? Because I'm Jewish? Growing up, I heard many stories from my grandpa, but I'm just going to share one little story tonight, and it's that he was with his group of men that he was sleeping in the bunker with, and they were so hungry that one of the guys saw a pile of trash, and it was potato peels from the Nazis. So the guy couldn't help himself, and he went and got the potato peel. The German Nazis saw him grab the potato peel, and that was it. They took the entire group of guys, which was 30 guys, "You come with me," and they took him into the forest, into a little section where no one else saw. And he just counted, "I just want 10 of you." And he took the 10, killed the other ones, and he gave all 10 of those guys a shovel. And he said, "Dig. I need you to dig exactly 2 feet by 4 feet long." And they sat there and dug. And my papa said it took hours and hours because the ground was rock hard, full of ice and stones. He said what should have taken us seconds took us hours. He said we were digging and there were barking dogs and they were screaming at us and shouting and there was jeeps everywhere and they were just making sure we were digging. Does anyone know what they were digging? They were digging their graves. And my papa thought, I'm either saying, this is it, I'm done. So he happened to know German from when he lived in Lodz and he had German friends, and he looked at the German soldier and he said, "Your dog is hungry, he's starving, he doesn't stop barking." And the German soldier said to my papa, "You filthy Jew, then take my German shepherd to the kitchen and go feed it." So my papa took the shepherd to the kitchen and was feeding it food. He heard all the gunshots, all the 9 guys were dead, and then the Jeep pulls up to the kitchen and says to my papa, "Get in the car and bring the dog in the car, we're going back to the camp." My papa knew that very minute that it was a miracle he had survived. It was a relentless cycle of torture and starvation. With the uncertainty of each passing hour, my papa miraculously survived. But tragically, his entire family was murdered, with the exception of his sister, Tamara. During my childhood, my papa would always tell a story so that my generation could ensure that these horrors never happen again. I stand before you as the granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors to make sure you hear the story as a call to remembrance, as a plea for understanding, and a vow to ensure that these atrocities never happen again. So I beg you, as a witness to this testimony, to carry my papa's story Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with your community. For the Holocaust did not begin with the gas chambers. It began with lies and discrimination. Thank you.
The El Mole Rachamim is the prayer for the souls of those we have lost. Please rise.
El Mole Rachamim, Shacher Mamerami, Hamse Menucha Nechona, Tachar Kanfei HaShechina, Bemalot Kedoshim, Uteorim, Kezor Harakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmot Shisha Milyon, Achinu ve'achiotenu, Shenehergu al Kiddush Hashem. Ba'al harachamim, yasirim beseter knafav leolamim. V'yitzeror b'tzeror chachayim et nishmatam. Adonai hu nachalatam. Ve'anuchu b'shalom al mishkavam. Ve'nomar Amen.
God, full of mercy, defender of widows and father of orphans, be not silent or restrained regarding the blood which was spilt like water. Grant proper rest beneath the wings of your presence in the great heights of the holy and pure, who like the brilliance of the heavens give light and shine for the souls of multitudes of thousands, men, women, boys and girls who were killed and slaughtered and burnt and suffocated and buried alive in the lands touched by the hand of the German oppressor and its followers. All of them holy and pure. May the Garden of Eden be their resting place. Therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter them in the shelter of his wings for eternity and bind their souls with the bond of life. God is their inheritance, and may they find peaceful repose in their resting places. And let us say,
Amen.
please be seated. We're going to prepare for Kaddish, for the prayer for the dead, and we are going to begin by remembering those who passed away during the Holocaust. These are names that were submitted by members of our congregation. Ben and Rose Topas, George and Bella Topas, Sarah Moskowitz, Jacob, Abraham, Genya, Simon, Mietek, Bella, and Lily Topas, Henry Yola and Carol Wolfstein, Alvin Barbanel, Marianne Barbanel, Ronald Barbanel, Sophie Strauss, Margot Rubenstein, the Knopf family, the family of David Migdal, the father of Helena Migdal, Helen Adler, Samuel Adler, Adolf Rothschild, Hannah Rothschild, Sarah Ackner, the Davidovsky family, Richard Ehrman, Marilyn Ehrman, Robert Ehrman, Jean Bennett, Philip Bennett, Jacob Spitz and Ida Malka Spitz, Rachel Spitz, and Jacob Trapadia and their children Herschel and Bela, Israel Borowick, Esther Borowick, Avram Borowick, Paul Borenstein and Dorothy Borenstein, Magdalena Gilbert, Mayor Gadas, William Gantz, Rachel Lefkowitz, Jacqueline Besharat, the Frankel family of Skala, Poland. Are there any other names to add? We also remember those in our own congregation who have passed away. We begin with those who died during Shloshim, the past 30 days. Chet Cohen, Jean Cohen, Tim Deneen, Barbara Horowitz, Patsy Kelly, Alex Lang, Michelle Maman, Joel Panish, Leora Ravid, Ruth Stern, Susan Tuckman, Norma Jean Weiner. We also remember those whose yortzites occurred during this past week, the anniversary of their deaths. Pauline Adler, Frank Albert, Louis Applebaum, Aziz Arash Tuzadeh, Lawrence Arnold, Ruth Astor, Ida Barkin, Ruth Geshenowitz Baron Bass, Dolph Baum, Rose Bauman, Harriet Beck, Donald Burkus, Bert Blauner, Harold Blumenfeld, Francis Bacanek, Tamar Bornstein, Jules Boville, Anna Brandis, Richard Browerman, Eli Brode, Steve Broidy, John Catafo, Joseph Chizek, Mana Cohen, Paul Colton, Irma Dahl, Betty Davids, Yetta Davidson, Bruce Arthur Devlin, Sylvia Azor, Ben Fenton, Ermin Finkenthal, Herbert Emanuel Fisher, Lois Jean Foreman, Joan Friedman, Grace Gabelson, David Gelfand, Linda Gilbert, Herbert Ginsberg, Nathan Gitlin, Hyman David Glassberg, Julius Goldberg, David Goldsmith, Molly Gohl, Florence Sesson Goodman, Sam Gottenberg, Marjorie Ann Gould, Erwin Greenwald, Rose Gray, Lillian Harrison, Arthur Henry Heisler, Frida Haymont, Ralph Kalish, Anna Kallick, Sidney Jason Keith, Norton Kirschbaum, Selma Klin, Solomon Kokotov, Aaron Kosman, Joan Kreider, Andrea Laffer, Arthur Layson, Saul Laska, Sidney Laxer, Beverly Miller, Jack Mizrahi, Bernard Morgan, Wolfie Nadelman, Nehemiah Naim, Lisa Block-Olshansky, Leon Paris, Minna Picard, Doris Preston, Dora Resend, Molly Loomer-Rimoch, Ethel Roseman, Anna Rosen, Burton Rosen, Joseph Ross, Carol Gray Salinas, Mildred Schwartz, Louis Schwimmer, Rose Schwimmer, Elias Silverstein, Mark Sizemore, Israel Sonis, Aline Weil Speed, Annette Starr, Olga Stock, Sylvia Pankin Sutkin, Elsie Teitelbaum, Susie Temkin, Florin Tilzer, Sharon Tuman, Josephine Tramer, Rhett Turner, Belle Verzi, Dorothy Walder, Evelyn Wallace, Nancy Weeks, Russell Weinstein, Irving Weisberg, Mickey Weiss, Philip Wexler, Barbara Wise, Sally Wool, Sandra Zwern. Are there any other names to add? Please say them. Thank you. We also remember those who gave their lives defending the United States of America and the State of Israel, those who died on October 7th, and those who have been wounded in the Gaza-Israel war. Remember all others who have been killed in other wars or in violence or have died from disease and suffering, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We take them all as our own as we turn to page 294 and rise for the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chai echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'gala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbachata v'nechamata, dami ron v'yoma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen.
We conclude our Shabbat service with the words of Oseh Shalom. Feel free to put your arms around your loved ones.
Put your arms around each other and don't let anyone stand alone.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 We're going to remain standing for a quick Kiddush and Motzi. We are found on page 5. A very special thank you to Susan Rosenstein and all of our musicians. There were so many creatives and musicians and music that was lost in the Holocaust, and I know so many have dedicated your life to keeping that music alive. So thank you for elevating our prayers.
We invite the, where's the B'nai Mitzvah family?
Presley's right there.
Come up.
We're going to invite Presley back up to help lead us in Kiddush. Again, we are
Challah, not
found-
matzah.
Yeah, it's challah, not matzah. And we're found on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, v'yahava uvratzon, inchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, ki banu bacharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat koshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchatanu. Raise it really high. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat l'chaim. Take a sip. And the first Shabbat since after Passover with some nice leavened chametz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. You gotta rip it first. Oh, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
We invite you for some oneg, some food outside. Please join us.
Thank you so much for being here tonight, and please have a wonderful Shabbat with your friends and family.